At CES yesterday, it was all eyes on Nvidia as Jensen Huang took the stage for his keynote. Two of his big announcements from the event were Nvidia's model for self-driving cars and more details about Rubin, the company's next big AI chip it is working on. The chip is supposed to be cheaper to use compared to previous models, and in some cases, companies should have to use less of them. I want to bring on Steve Jang, founder and managing partner at Kindred Ventures, to help us break it all down. Steve, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
So you are on the ground at CES. Were you at the keynote yesterday?
Yeah, CES every year is a great moment for all of our hardware companies and compute companies to come together. So CES itself has a new life because of AI, which is great to see.
Nice. Well, I want to talk to you about the keynote. So, look, the two big announcements coming out of Jensen Huang's speech yesterday were the self-driving car model, and I know you're close to that space, and so maybe we'll get there in a second. But I want to start with the new generation of chips that they gave us more details on, the Rubin family. What stood out to you about Jensen's speech about the chips? I kind of thought that we knew a lot of the stuff yesterday, didn't we?
Um, yes and no. I think everyone knew that the Vera Rubin super chip and the Rubin GPU were coming, but I think some of the details weren't widely understood yet. I think there was a couple concerns coming in. One was, is this going to be a drop-in chip to replace the B200s and GB200s? And it looks like it's not, right? So what you saw yesterday was a Vera Rubin super chip, a CPU and two GPUs, and then in a node, and then Rubin GPUs. So these are sold and delivered as nodes and racks. You can't just take a single GPU and replace your existing chips. So as in the data center, you actually have to change how your rack system works. So the rack is a system in this new Rubin series. So what you get though is 10x inference efficiency. You get 3 to 4x training efficiency, but it's going to require some work on the clouds and neoclouds parts. So it's a pay to play, right? They have to compete with paying up for a new series while they're still figuring out how to get delivered and monetize on the Blackwells. And so this is a continuation of the battle royale that the hyperscalers, the neoclouds, the inference engines, the frontier labs are playing right now. They have alliances, pre-commitments, bookings, and they're still figuring out how to utilize the last series of chips. So I think 2026, one of our predictions for 2026 is that this battle royale is going to be even more intense than last year. Many more bookings, many more alliances that you'll see. And they're going to have to fight for customers and still monetize and utilize all those B200s sitting in data centers and still getting shipped to them.
Right.
So the net though is that it's great for inference engines, it's great for frontier labs, it's great for neo labs. It's going to be expensive for neoclouds and hyperscalers, but long term they're going to be able to have the very best chips compared to anywhere else around the world.
Well, let me ask you this idea that you have to sort of replace the entire rack and it's not a drop-in chip.
Yeah.
Does that come across to you as a strategic move from Nvidia in a way to sort of ensure that customers are buying more of the whole system from them? Or is this an innovation, in the sense that you couldn't actually get the benefits that it wants you to get without buying all the other stuff around the chip?
My understanding, and we've just had a sort of day to look at this, but my understanding is that it's not a business decision; it's a technical systems decision. That this is how the Vera Rubin nodes and racks will work. I don't know if you saw the picture of it. It's a golden monolith.
Yeah.
Beautiful. My comment at the time was, "Hey, looks impressive. Also looks very expensive." I mean,
Yeah.
that's why they colored it in gold, right? And so I think this is a system as a rack solution, and I don't know that it's a pricing or a business decision so much as it is. This is the new rack system and node system that they want to push out there, and that's a technical requirement. And so, we'll find out more in the coming days. But I think this is really interesting because it's a replacement cycle. It's like the same way that consumers replace their iPhone for the next iPhone.
Right.
Their old iPhone, their current iPhone still works, but they want the next one. And I think basically the entire industry, the compute industry, is essentially on the
This
iPhone
replace
replacement cycle.
the Nvidia replacement cycle.
Yeah, you don't need it yet, but you'll need it soon, and so you should get it now and book it now. Otherwise, you might be waiting in line, and then a slip on your competitive race with others. So I
I will
think,
I will say it's funny to me was I was watching the live stream and I was on YouTube and wherever I was watching it, the comments underneath, the top comments were, "This is the consumer electronics show. This is like one of the least consumer things." And look, I know you say it. Look, all of AI rests on the chips, right? And
yeah.
at the end of the day, it all comes back to it. But some people were saying, gosh, it's getting more and more technical and in terms of what's being announced at these events.
I mean, CS has always been a mix of some consumer devices and a lot of infrastructure. The server companies, the chip companies, the component companies have always been out here. This is sort of it's always been sort of the trading order filling convention from a
Right.
long time ago. But it's 1000x now because if you think about all the keynotes, like very few of them are actually touching the consumer, right? You saw the AMD keynote, you'll see a Siemens keynote, you'll see so many keynotes from companies that are 2-3 steps away from the consumer, but it's super important, right? This whole Vera Rubin series that they announced, it's built for a future around consumer agents and enterprise agents. That's why they built this. The prediction is that over the next year or two, inference workloads will exceed training workloads, which will be the first time that's ever happened. And so this is made for agentic workloads. The number of requests that you're making on an inference level requires a tokens per second per watt calculation that we just haven't seen in the industry. So as companies like Perplexity and Claude Code, you see what they're doing with their harness on top of their Opus models, Codex, things like that. These agent platforms are going to use up so much inference that you need a different chipset and a different system. And so
Let me ask you about
that,
consumer workloads was definitely a focus yesterday, but a lot of it too was physical AI, right? I
mm,
mean, manufacturing, robotics, and we had a good story about that yesterday too. How Nvidia is really gunning for this category of customers now with its Omniverse suite. What do you make of the focus on physical AI? Because it wasn't just Nvidia yesterday. I think other chip companies as well announced more products targeted towards these sort of industrial
yeah.
applications. Why is this such a big focus now? Is this where they have to look for growth?
No, I don't think the narrative is that they have to look for growth, and so they're sort of forcing this theme. I think that this is a theme that's been brewing. I mean, if you think about what a chip maker, and Intel used to do this a long time ago, but what NVIDIA is doing is sort of setting the mandate for the conversation and providing the tools for that conversation and that building to happen in a sector. So essentially, it's sort of like kingmaking, right? We often talk about
They're setting the tone.
yeah, do venture funds king make companies? Well, I'll tell you, Nvidia is king making sectors, right? And so, what you're seeing is that they did this with LLMs, right? They focused in on LLMs, and had great things to say about not only OpenAI but also XAI and Elon Musk's ability to stand up a data center very quickly with, lo and behold, their chips inside, and then they king made on the robotic sector, right? And you saw that with Groot and everything that they were doing there. And now, when they say physical AI, it includes robotics concepts. It also includes VLAs, right, and VLMs. And so they're not. These are derivative technologies that are improving over time in the industry. If you went to any of the ML conferences over the last year, like ICML, ICLR, NeurIPS, you saw that physical AI was a huge thing. And so world models, everything from world models to robotics models to autonomy is part of physical AI.
It's very, very much the narrative that people want to attach themselves to right now.
Yeah, and if you saw what they announced yesterday, they have open data sets, they have open source models, right? They showed that demo video, and we know this well because one of our companies, one of our portfolio companies, Neuro, is an Nvidia partner, is invested in by Nvidia and Uber, and they launched their Neuro car with Lucid and Uber, and it's AGX store inside Nvidia chips. Right. And what NVIDIA basically shipped yesterday, very interesting, is that other auto OEMs and other technology companies can use these models and their chips, right? Their chips are always inside.
Right.
And this accelerates the ecosystem so that using open source, which I think there's been an argument that what is this purpose of open source from a monetization perspective? Well, in this case, it sells chips. And then the second part of that, of what I thought was super interesting, is that they basically offered a hardware, model, and software kit to create your own Tesla FSD or your own Waymo. So when they're
Anyone can, it's very much democratizing who can develop on this technology. I think that's a good point. Actually, I hadn't thought about that. Very quickly, after all these announcements yesterday, the stock didn't really move. And look, Nvidia stock is kind of, a tough thing to predict. But what did you make of that part of this?
Yeah, and from a public stock perspective, I think a lot of the Rubin stuff, announcements, and even the physical AI, there's been data out there, right? Neuro's been using Thor, and with Uber. Uber was announced as a Nvidia partner as well. So a lot of this stuff is already probably factored in to a Wall Street's pricing. But the other thing that's interesting here is that if you look at Nvidia today, they are pushing forward an agenda against the narrative that is there a bubble? And there's another counter narrative, which is Nvidia's throne at risk because of TPUs from Google, or is it at risk because of inference chips? And what I'll tell you is the Vera Rubin family, that series of chips, it's 10x improvement in inference. So it kind of calls into question what was the narrative that was floating around the Grock acquisition. And I still think that we have some.
Does it make you question the Grock acquisition a little bit then?
No, it doesn't actually, because I think the Grock acquisition, we'll see if they actually use the Grock chip license in their product suite. I think if they do, it's heavily modified to fit into NVIDIA's suite. But what I think it was getting one of the world's best teams in inference. When we looked at that, it was like the SRAM innovation that Jonathan and team had achieved. There's very few people on the planet that know how to do that, and I don't think that's not in the wheelhouse of NVIDIA. So I think that was essentially a $20 billion talent acquisition, right?
Right, which is very much what they kind of call it by doing everything but the acquisition. I mean, they didn't call it an acqui-hire, but
I mean, regulatory, FTC issues aside, it's a great talent acquisition, and 20 billion is a lot for any company other than Nvidia, right? And so, when I look back at the Grock acquisition, they didn't take Grock Cloud, right? They have DGX Cloud, so they don't need that. And I think that they're going to build a new inference chip that's focused on tokens per second, and it's not focused on training, obviously. And if you look at what they're offering here, it's saying you can pay to play here, and you can get a much more performant inference and training chip in Rubin. And we're probably going to offer you around the same time, maybe a little bit after, an inference accelerator that is single focused on that outcome and that use case. And so, I think as this unfolds, I think there may be a little bit more upward pressure on that price, but I think people are still grappling with a couple of these narratives. And so we'll see how that plays out in the future. But, the Rubin chips aren't coming out for a while either. So
and I think we were all excited to get more details on it yesterday, and we didn't have time to get to the self-driving car stuff, but we're going to talk about that in our next segment with our AI and robotics reporter. Steve, I want to thank you for joining us. Have fun at the rest of CES and enjoy the rest of the week. That is Steve Jang, founder and managing partner at Kindred Ventures, here on TI TV.